We will now move on. We have our education topic for this evening is spirals in action. Director Carson will be presenting. Superintendent Sullivan, would you like to introduce the topic?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Working together to support innovation and inquiry looked a bit different this year. As you will hear tonight, a team of lead educators supported the work with a variety of online meetings and platforms to keep innovation and inquiry moving forward. School District 73 inquiry work has caught the attention of a large audience. The work of this team of educators was presented at ICSEI, that is the International Congress of School Effectiveness and Improvement, in March of this year. Barb Hamblett and Angela Stott presented with a team on an inquiry around being, belonging, becoming, improving transitions for Indigenous learners. And Lisa Carson presented a paper on building a supportive leadership model with a focus on inquiry. So I'd now like to turn it over to Director Carson to introduce her team for tonight's presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Sullivan. We've been pleased to see that innovation and inquiry work continued this year. Our educators have remained curious about finding innovative practice to support and improve student learning, and the inquiry process gave them the strategies to do the work effectively. The inquiry team prepared a learning series. We had groups of coaches connecting with individual school teams, supporting their inquiries throughout the year, and developed a repository of information to make all of this work accessible to school district staff. The work of our district isn't only gaining traction, but as you heard, provincially and globally as well. And in fact, during this past month, both Angela Stott and Barb Hamblett were key supports in the Network of Innovation and Indigenous Education, a symposium featuring both provincial and global thought leaders. And so with that, I would like to turn it over to Principals Hamblett and Stott to highlight some of the work that happened in School District 73 this past year.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm just going to take a moment to share my screen. So just bear with me for one moment. Okay, thank you everyone for inviting Angela and I this evening to share one part of our district's professional learning journey. There have been so many challenges this year, but we have remained committed to a learning focus for teachers and school leaders. This evening, we're going to provide you with an overview of the district Spirals learning work, the impact that we're seeing as a result of this work, and we're going to talk a little bit about where we're hoping to go next.
Before we begin, we would like to acknowledge that we are joining you virtually from the unceded territory of the Secwepemc people and are grateful to be living, working, and learning on this rich and diverse land.
SD73 has been sending educators to UBC for the Transformative Educational Leadership Program since 2016, actually. Jake Schmidt and I were the first to participate and learn about expanding our worldviews and how to go about transforming systems through exposure to all kinds of research and learning about the power of networks. It was here that I learned about the spirals of inquiry as a well-researched tool to help with this transformation. As a board, you will remember how spirals of inquiry functions as a framework to transform teaching and learning from your invitation last year to have Dr. Halbert come and talk to you about this. The spiral of inquiry framework has continued to guide all of the work we've been doing in our learning series.
With all of this work, we have maintained 3 hard goals. They are hard goals because they are complex. They are, however, important goals involving the development of adaptive expertise, building networks of schools, and working toward ensuring that all students cross the stage with dignity, purpose, and options.
As a district, we maintained our connection with Dr. Judy Halbert and Dr. Linda Kaser from the TELP program at UBC. And in 2018, they came to Kamloops to work with the school inquiry teams for 2 sessions. It was at a dinner meeting in October where we decided to experiment with a model of having past TELP grads coach school teams with their inquiry. This was our first purposeful step in creating a culture of curiosity for the district. I'm just going to share with you now a short clip from the second session that year with Linda and Judy. We were able to capture Linda's thoughts about the work that we were beginning to focus on.
You know what? Both my colleague and I are, I think, deeply impressed with the approach that's taken. All of these goals, these 3 goals, if they were easy goals, then we would have already done them. So they're difficult, they're challenging, we call them hard goals. And I think the way that this school district, and I mean this quite sincerely, is the way they're approaching it. You want to take the ideas seriously, you want to be able to think about them, you want to apply some of them, and you want to take the right amount of time to do that. And I think the pacing and organization of what's been done here is exemplary. You know, we've worked in a lot of places. You can just tell that the people have come with a spirit of, you know, they've volunteered to be a part of it. They're sort of intrigued, and then they've come, and they know it's not simple or easy or a, you know, think and do book, because it's complex, adaptive work. You're having to become an adaptive expert, and you're having to work as a team, and that's not always the way we went into education. We tended to go in as individuals. Now we have to be teams. And I think there's a real team spirit here. I think the fact that you're filming early in the process and thinking about it and making it accessible to other people so that it's not a closed shop, it's an open process. I've been impressed and actually really excited. There's an energy to it that just feels really great.
This is where I joined the team. Barb and I began to work in partnership to grow capacity and deepen understanding of how the spiral of inquiry framework can affect student learning. Barb and I led 5 sessions last year, 3 at the group, 1 on a bus, and by June, we had moved to a virtual space.
We spent a lot of time helping participants understand the importance of scanning to make sure that we were really meeting the actual needs of students. Just prior to spring break, 40 of us, along with Dr. Halbert, boarded a school bus and visited 3 schools to see inquiry in action. We affectionately called this our Curiosity Cab Tour. Here is one small snippet of that tour from last year.
I was one of the fortunate school leaders that got to host the Spiral of Inquiry Curiosity Cab today. So it started with a conversation with my team, letting them know that upper senior admin had selected our school, and the energy, I just have to say, was just really inspiring to our staff who have been doing really hard work with our kids. So to have a day like today where 40 educators came in and we got to showcase our spiral of inquiry and the hard work we've been doing is going to gain momentum with, I know, at our school and the 2 other schools today that we visited.
Being in the schools was unbelievable. Teachers opening their classrooms and letting us talk with their kids, sharing what they're passionate about, talking about what their worries are and how they're trying to make things better was amazing.
I'm in a position where I'm helping lead a spiral at my school, and sometimes you're wondering if you're on the right track. And as you make your own discoveries and then visit another context in their building and see it in action, you realize everyone's going through this process of rediscovery and adjustment and being inspired to try something actually quite different.
I think a lot of us are engaging in questions and developing hunches and looking at changing our pedagogy and adapting, and the spirals are just a natural framework to use to explore and share what we're doing.
at Juniper Ridge. The focus on reading is making a profound difference.
Hearing students talk about their learning, but learning as skills versus what are you learning. So one of the girls in a grade 2 class at Juniper was writing about seals, but she didn't talk to me about seals at all. Normally students would talk about seals and the parts of seals and what they ate. She talked about how she went to the reading app and she learned how to read, and then she had different reading levels that she went upwards in, and then she talked about how when she was reading she could learn how to write. So, and if she could learn how to write, she could learn how to read. And that was that aha moment where the student was focusing on her reading and writing skills, not necessarily the content.
This past year has been wild, and we are proud of our resiliency and the resiliency of this year's participants in the learning series. Although we were continuing to meet virtually, we had to move our sessions to after school, and still the people came. We even widened our audience to include teacher candidates from TRU and educators from out of district.
One of the highlights this year was that we were able to work with the LDP interns. Some of those interns are now using the framework in their own context. And 3 of the 4 inquiries that were showcased featured these interns using the spiral of inquiry in the Curiosity Cab tour.
Throughout this work, we continue to see an impact on student learning. We have captured this snippet for you. It's from Barriere Secondary, where students talk about the effect their teachers' curiosity has had on their learning.
I think like with having such a big project that usually when we've done big projects in the past, it'd be like, okay, we have to make this neat, we have to make this pretty, like this is gonna give us like top mark. But here it changed because it was more like I want to have this ball to be launched farther than the rest.
Other than just like learning, I think it really helps me to grow as a person. I've become like a lot more patient, and my like communication skills and my like collaboration skill have grown like a lot.
It helped me to actually succeed at school.
And that brings us to 4 days ago. All of the work to this point culminates in the Curiosity Cab, the virtual edition. We were fortunate to highlight 4 inquiry teams from across the district, celebrating their journeys of curiosity. 2 were school-based, 1 was an example of networking across a number of elementary schools, and the one we are going to show you a clip of, highlighting inquiry at the community level.
So what we found was there was a real need when we did the scan, and a request that we weren't doing a very good job of engaging Indigenous families and parents in the conversation on how to support their children in our school system.
I think it's the parent advisory committees are so important and so helpful for the school. It gives families a voice and a place to be included in the children's education system. Around the Indigenous perspective, there's different reasons why that voice hasn't been heard, but now with the opportunity to come together and be more organized, that's what we've done. So the opportunity came out to the schools and the parents. There was a call out who would like to attend, and so those that felt they wanted to came and joined the group.
So I wanted to have a voice. I wanted there to be a voice, and I knew that this was a potential for us to be able to have that type of voice. The school district, especially 73, has been a big leader in pushing for that sort of for the Aboriginal. And so I wanted to be a part of that and help support that.
So as pointed out earlier this evening, the work that we're doing in SD 73 is having an impact both provincially and globally. Angela and I are sharing presentations at the provincial level, mostly with the Network of Inquiry and Indigenous Education. And we've continued to be involved with TELP as reading facilitators at UBC. And this year, Angela, Lisa, and I presented at ICSI, an international congress that was hosted virtually from New Zealand. Our next steps include a continuation of this work. We're already developing a 4-part learning series for next year and intend on maintaining those 3 very hard goals. In doing so, we will be developing stronger and broader partnerships within and beyond SD 73.
We know that this is important and meaningful work, which connects us back to why we are educators, our purpose and passion.
Angela and I thank the board for your time tonight and for your continued support and curiosity in this work. Kukshan.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Trustees, do you have questions or comments? I'm going to start actually because I don't see anyone, and then I'll go to Trustee Sim, but I have the opportunity to have firsthand experience with some of the work in the Curiosity Cab as my daughter attends Barriere Secondary, and I have to say the growth in the classes that she's taken and in both what they're learning and how they're learning has been notable. Her growth mindset as a student has increased exponentially. So I can really attest to the fact that the work that's being done is impactful. And so I really want to thank you for that as I certainly see it in my own student, definitely. Trustee Sim, you had a question though.
First, a comment, which is, aren't we fortunate to be a part of a school district that is not only, provincially recognized, internationally recognized, globally recognized? I want to thank you so much for such incredible, thoughtful work and being able to take on a big challenge. When I look at this, I can only imagine what it must have been at the start of the journey, which is like, how are we going to turn a tanker? And yet you have proven yourself to be powerful tugboats that have really made that impact. I'm just wondering if you see this work and how it can transform almost entire school culture, whether it be at the board level around policy, community building, and school culture building. If we put the question of what if at the center of it, and also I'm wondering where you see the question or concept of what's your why or your purpose, and keeping that as a very centered conversation. Is that part of sort of this growth spirals?
Chairperson, I'd be happy to start if you wish. So the why, I think, is, it's a fairly straightforward one. It's to change life chances for kids. And when we do work like this, where we build inquiry and we build all the foundational pieces that are required, we do find pathways to make improvements and change mindsets, which is not easily done in a secondary school. For those of you that have had teenagers, you might relate to that a little bit, but it certainly can be done, and we have evidence of it on multiple levels. I think it can become so organically ingrained once you start to learn this work that there are multiple platforms for it. So I was doing a coaching session today with a challenge in a school with a fairly new VP, and she talked about all the pieces she had, and I said, and if you put them together, you see you have a spiral, right? And she was amazed by this and said, of course I do. Now, and that was her next step. So not only is it can give you a product, but it's a process that can lead you through to that product that gives you some real areas for growth, for schools, for kids, for learning, for all of the system to be embedded. Certainly I've seen Director Keyline's team using it often, and we've used it when we started talking about data platforms. And you wouldn't necessarily think of that, but it's still learning. And so when we can apply it to all levels, whether it's young students or if it's those of us that are more mature folk at the board office, there are certainly applications for it all the way through. It's systemic.
I think just in follow up to that, I think, and I wasn't clear, so I apologize, but do you see this spiral also putting students and their focuses of finding their why and their purpose?
Again, I'd be happy to start, Chairperson, and invite other members of the team to jump in, Angela and Barb, please. But absolutely, because as we talk about, what motivates students and how to move them forward, I do believe that building catapults and looking at that in relationship to a physics course is going to give them a different why than it is to look at textbooks and do that studying. But I'm sure Angela Stott could speak to it far more eloquently, being that she was front and center with that project.
Thank you, Lisa. I think Trustee Sim, what Rhonda Kershaw, I guess I should say Chair Kershaw, said earlier really exemplifies just because what Lisa was saying. I think she sees it, she hears it at home, and it's really a shift from I'm doing school to I'm investing in my learning and my journey. So the BC curriculum lends itself to this work because we have curricular competencies and content, and that blends in. And then it's about inquiry, it's about context, it's about being curious learners who are growth mindset, and we're in the infinite game, and the spiral is a spiral on purpose. So you're not in physics for physics, you're in physics to develop some skills, learn some content, and then catapult into that next spiral wherever that takes you. So does it really help kids define a why? I would say it can, yes.
I would just add to that too, that one of the most important phases of the spiral of inquiry is scanning. So when we scan to truly understand what's going on for kids and asking ourselves how we actually know that, what we're doing is we are honoring on a regular basis the feedback that kids are giving us. And sometimes as educators, that doesn't seem like a natural process. But once you get into the mindset as an adult, you begin to co-construct what's going on in the classroom, and you actually value kids' input. So I think that in turn helps develop learner agency. In other words, kids get better and better about talking about their learning, about where they need to go, and they can articulate how to get there. So, and that's really what we're trying to do with all of this, is develop learner agency.
Thank you. I love the question about, or I love the comment about the infinite mindset. I'm just wondering if Simon Sinek had found his way into your readings.
You're not supposed to know that. Yes, of course. No, it's so true though. There's so many things that link, and when you think about, that's exactly it. Like when I've listened to his work and read his book, I'm like, you're right, and that's it. And that's what we want that's what we should want for ourselves. We're not done the game of learning when we hit 18. We're not done the game of learning when we finish university. So if we're on that path, so don't we want to have the best life possible? And this isn't just a road stop with no purpose. This is an important part of their lives, and we need to do a good job serving kids.
And there's no winners and losers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Thank you.
I have Trustee Karpuk, but I just want to say the comment about the learner agency and those students really taking control of themselves. I think that's what I noticed most in the Catapult project in particular, was that all of a sudden this group of kids that just was taking physics because they had to take physics actually cared, and not even that they cared necessarily about the equations in physics. They cared about the learning of what they were doing. It was really, really powerful and incredible to watch firsthand. Trustee Karpuk.
This isn't really a question, it's more of a comment. What I've loved seeing over the past few years is how this has gone from a trickle with just a few people being involved with it, and it's been growing and growing, and it's not just isolated to a classroom or a school. It's not just isolated to teachers or to principals, but we're seeing this systematic change that's permeating through the entire district from the very bottom to the very top. And not just in one location, but spreading throughout the district and now spreading beyond the district. And I can't thank you enough for the work that you and your team and all of the educators that are involved with this have done, because I really do think that you're transforming the entire district. It's not just one classroom, it's not just one school, but this is really taking off and having a tremendous impact. And it only benefits, well, it doesn't just benefit our students, it benefits everyone, because we're all getting this chance to see the learning. We're all getting this chance to learn along with each other. And I think it's just an absolutely profound impact. So thank you so much to all of you.
Thank you. Trustees, Vice Chair Wade.
Really just a quick comment, because I've been watching this work for years. And quite often, Angela and Barb, I'm waving at you as you're in room A at the board office doing your work, and I'm zipping in to do something. I'm so proud to sit here and be part of the board, because the spirals are all about being of service to our students, right? It's in service to our students. And we've stopped asking the question, how can we get them to be better? How can we get our students to do better? This has so appropriately flipped it on its head, because it really was never about that. It was about how can we as the leaders, as the participants, as the people who have the responsibility of education, how can we do better in service to our students and their learning? And both of you have led this brilliantly. And I'm really excited and proud to be in a district that has flipped that on their heads, that it really isn't about making our kids do better, right? Like get that A. It is about how can we do better in service to our students. So thank you. You two are an amazing team. I've enjoyed watching you through the COVID phase, because I never saw you in the first phase because you were always out and about. But I have enjoyed my brief little interludes at the board office as you've had your head down working so hard. And this is a silly question, but I really, really have to ask it. Why was the chair on the table?
I can tell you. We were learning about a decision-making model, and the only way we could figure out how to teach it was to demonstrate it in action. And I happened to have a camera with no tripod. So the chair on the table was our tripod. And the movie was really bad, but it worked.
And it was shown at TELP. So some of our colleagues watched us in action. It was terrible.
Oh, that's fabulous. I'm glad I asked the question.
Sometimes learning is messy.
Exactly.
This has been a fabulous presentation, and I thank you very much. I do feel that we'll have to conclude, and thank you very much. But Superintendent Sullivan, did you have anything to add before I wrap things up?
No, I just want to thank Barb and Angela for their leadership in this area. I know they've worked very hard, and I did observe them and did drop into the committee room there while they were working away at this. So I know they put considerable effort into this, and just their positive approach. And I know they were stimulated by the whole process intellectually and otherwise. So I want to thank them for their leadership and for their presentation this evening.